Welcome to the rough edge of the pineapple. This is a story that's taken me a while to come to grips about being diagnosed and having cancer. I've shared my story with a few people, which has helped them. So I thought I would share with everybody on YouTube. Welcome to the rough edge of the pineapple. This is my story about cancer. Yes, it's all true. It's been pricey down, so hopefully I can fit it into a short episodes. Everything happened as the way I've said it. And I know it's a bit of a nodding head, but it's pretty hard not to. Part one was the road to finding out that I had cancer. Part two will be about how I dealt with it and what happened until I went to the operation. Part three is the operation and where we went from there. Being diagnosed with cancer. Now, if I try to be funny, forgive me, because if I don't laugh, I'm going to cry. So I will try and be a little bit humorous and use a few lines from movies, etc., to try and lighten this up a little. Because some of this reminds me of certain things in movies. One of them, which I'm going to start off with, it was Dark on the Moon on the 6th of June. And it was an ambulance that I was in. Yeah, well, a few years ago, prior to COVID, I'd had a heart attack and had 2 stents put in. And every so often I used to get funny pains. This particular night, and this is why it reminds me of Convoy and the first line, is because we had no power. There was a really serious storm. The power was out. I had pain up my left arm. And I went, oh no. Called the ambulance straight away, and of course they couldn't do anything in the house, so they took me out into the ambulance. And they decided that they would take me to hospital. Now, they'd given me a shot of ketamine, and that was fine, and we're getting close to the hospital, and there's a few sharp turns, and one of the ambulance officers looks at me and says, you okay? And I went, yeah, I'm fine. Just tell the driver to stop doing donuts. Anyway, we get to the hospital, and they get me out on the trolley, and I nearly am blown down the driveway because the storm was that bad. It took the trolley, and I moved quite a couple of feet before they stopped it totally. It was really gusty wind. Anyway, they get me in there and check me over, and they decided to give me a CT scan. So we go into the CT scan, and we lost power. Oh, hang on a minute, we'll have to kick in the generator. So the generator kicks in. So I have a CT scan. Now this is about, by this time it's about 2 a.m. in the morning after they've checked bloods and everything else. At 4 a.m. they come back, oh, we need to do another scan. Okay, fine, do another scan. So we do another scan. At 10 o'clock No, it was actually 8 o'clock. They came in and said, oh, look, we'll let you go soon, but we're just getting something checked at the moment. Okay. When they came and they said, we're sorry to keep you, but we actually found something and we don't know what it is. I went, oh. On the bottom of the scan, we found a little nodule. And we've had lots of people look at it and nobody seems to know what it is. Okay. Now, this, of course, is on the edge of COVID. And anyway, they said, well, we'll have to wait a bit longer. So we waited a bit longer. They still had no results. So they said, oh, look, we'll probably have to get you back in for some more tests. Okay, fine. But it might be a few weeks. Yeah, it's COVID. Anyway, the doctor said, look, we'll look after you. Just don't worry. I'll make sure that something happens. Okay, thank you. And really nice guy. Really nice guy. This was Monash Casey. Great doctor, very caring. Anyway, I get a phone call and I need to have not only a colonoscopy, but a gastroscopy and a sidostropy and an up and down Yeah, I'm being funny. So I had to have both on the same day. Okay, that's fine. So I go in there, I do all the prep, I have the colonoscopy, and for whatever reason, I had the gastroscopy, but for whatever reason, the colonoscopy didn't quite work. So I hadn't had any food for 3 days by this stage. So, because I wasn't feeling well. So, anyway, I had to stay another day and put some more prep in and have another colonoscopy. And funny story is I was on 2 lists and one list thought I was on the other list and I sort of got caught in the middle. And anyway, finally they came out and they had a bit of a discussion and I was the first one after lunch. So that was fine. And the results of it was that they couldn't find anything. The gastroscopy was clear and the colonoscopy was clear. And the same doctor said, well, look, we'll work on this and see what we can do. Anyway, they referred me to Dandenong Monash and I was to have a biopsy. So I had a biopsy. They checked it out. It was just put a needle in and tried to suck the centre of the nodule. There's nothing in it. It's all clear. Well, we'd better do another one. This time we'll do it under CT scan. Now, by this time, we've gone from May, and we must be about June or July. And suddenly I've become priority 1. So it's going to take 4 weeks. So in the next week, I was back in hospital having more tests. I went in and out of hospital every second week. And I was having some sort of test. Now, the hardest part about this whole thing is that, what can you tell people? I'm not really sick. Well, why having all the tests? Well, I've sort of got something. What have you got? I don't know. What do the doctors say? They don't know. And people just looked at me weirdly. So in the end, didn't say anything. I had to shut up and stop talking. Anyway, I went back to Monash a week later and I had another biopsy. And again, nothing. So a week went by and then they said, okay, we want you to come in for a CT biopsy. Okay, so we went in for a CT or biopsy. And again, they took out one, and they were only supposed to take out one. Oh, we'll just take out another one, they said. And, oh, hang on, we'll take out another one. So they went inside and just went inside the nodule and took samples of 3 or 4. One really big one. Nothing. They really don't know. So they've referred me to the cancer unit at Moorabbin. Now, during this time, I have to admit I wasn't scared. I didn't know what I had, so what could I be afraid of? Nothing, because I don't know what I've got. I just took it calmly and whatever happens is whatever happens. I can't do anything about it, especially when I don't know what it is. I can't even fight this. What do I do? So I went over to the cancer unit and saw the specialist, and she looked at all the information and went, oh, this is definitely secondary, there's not much hope. I went, oh, okay. That's the way it is then. But in the back of my mind, I knew that wasn't quite right. But look, you have to look at the evidence. Anyway, I sent me up to have a blood test. Now, I'll say this because I've had lots of blood tests. Yeah, lots of them. So I go up there, I'm sitting in the chair, and she says, you can go now. I said, what do you mean you haven't given it to me? Oh, yeah. It was the first time I have had some blood taken where I didn't even know the needle was in me. This person was absolutely amazing at blood extraction. Absolutely brilliant. A week goes by and we get a phone call. We want you to have a PET scan. Now, PET scan is a nuclear scan. So, PET scan. But it might be about 4 weeks. A week later. Now, remember, this is in COVID. We're in total lockdown. We're not supposed to go very far unless it's an emergency or, seeing a doctor. A week later, I had to do all this prep. Now, the prep was huge. And I had to drink an incredible amount of special stuff. And it was late afternoon and we were late for the PET scan. And I thought it was going to be cancelled because I had to stop off for the toilet. And there was roadworks. Everything went wrong. Anyway, they said, oh, no, you're here now and you've done all the prep, we'll put you through. So they take me into this lead-lined room. And they come in with like I can only equate it to a front of a mobile gun, a big ballistic gun, sort of big screen on it. And anyway, they give me the stuff and then they close this very, very thick door. And you lay there and they said, right, we will let you know when you need to take this special stuff. Okay. So they inject me with this radiation and then they close the door and leave you sitting there, put the TV on, you watch the TV. And then in a few minutes they go, okay, you need to drink. And then you rest for a bit longer. Okay, you need to drink again. Okay, by this time, I'm not joking, I've had something like 5 or 6 litres of liquid. Busting. Well, almost. We've had all the prep and it should have started working now, we'll take you around. And I said, oh, can I go to the toilet, please? I'm busting. They said, oh, it's just there to your left. And I went, okay, so I've tried to open the door. I couldn't even open the door. It was that thick, full of lead. Anyway, that was fine. So we walked round to where the PET scan was I've got to go again, sorry. Okay, went to the toilet again. Going to do the PET scan. Now, you're warned that you actually glow from the radiation that they put into you. Yeah, you do. You become Spider-Man. Well, maybe the Hulk. You glow green. Anyway, to do the PET scan, which is a full body scan, you have to lie very, very still for about 20 minutes. I just made the 20 minutes before I needed to go to the toilet again. The scan went through and the girl came out and said, "Oh, everything's okay, you're fine, you can go now." Okay, thank you. So a week later, I go to Monash at Dandenong and they tell me that it's all clear. And they go, "Oh, okay, so they're going to try another biopsy." So we do another biopsy. No. All right, that failed too. So they extracted it and all there was liquid. There was nothing in it, no sign of anything. The PET scan will show up any sign of infection. That was totally clean. No sign of cancer, no sign of infection, no sign of anything. All good. By this time, the doctors are a bit perturbed about what do I have? Sorry if I'm going on, but true story. And look, it was hard to get through this and not tell people, not talk to anybody except my wife and a close friend. Because how can I say, well, I've sort of, I don't know. I've got something, don't know what it is. So they did another biopsy, still nothing. So this time they called me back in a week later and saw a specialist and they went, "We don't know what you've got. We don't know what it is. Nothing's showing up from the biopsies. So what we're going to do is we're going to operate and we're going to actually totally remove one of these little nodules. But it's going to be about 4 weeks." A week later, I get a phone call. "We're going to upgrade you to private. There's a free list on Monday morning and you're first on it." And I went, "Oh, wow, thank you." So, but I had to have a COVID test. Now, the COVID tests take about 3 or 4 days. This is early on during COVID. And I went, "Oh, well, I can't get to the hospital to have the COVID test until tomorrow morning. And that's Friday." And they went, "Oh." I said, "Well, it's a good hour's drive and the pathology will be closed by the time I get there. First thing Friday morning, come in and we'll do the COVID test and we'll rush it through." So went in, had the COVID test, got it the all clear. Now, as I said, this is during COVID. So my wife normally would come in and wait for me and at least see that I get settled down. And we couldn't do that. She had to do a drive-by. Literally, she had to drive past, push me out the door while she kept driving and go home. Well, not quite, but she wasn't allowed in the hospital at all. So she just had to leave me at the door. So the operation, as I said, was supposed to be half an hour. When I came to after it, I was a bit groggy and a bit disorientated because the time was more than half an hour. Within about an hour or so, the surgeon came by and he said to me, "Well, I found out what it is, but I've got some bad news." He said, I went in and I cut out the nodule, but I found this white Glad wrap, thin film inside. What is this? I looked and I looked and I looked everywhere. I looked at your appendix, I looked at all sorts of things. Couldn't find the source. In the end, I went, "Look, you know what? I'm just going to cut out the appendix." And I went, "Oh, okay, so I don't have appendix anymore." And he said, "When I took it out, and after the operation, before I came to see you, I put it under a microscope. And I found that your appendix was cancerous. And it was also perforated. Yes, perforated. Now, I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but I am a 1 in a million. And this is really rare. My appendix had been leaking inside me for about 10 to 15 years. And I sort of looked at him and he said, yep. He had about 150 photos and showed me this white milky film inside me. And he said, well, at least we've got the appendix out. And he said, what's going to happen now is we're going to refer you, and you will have to have this, you'll have to have a big operation where they will go in and scrape out all this film. And once they've finished scraping it out, they're going to use what's called HIPIC. Now, HIPIC is where, and this is layman terms, I'm not talking medical terms, where they get a spray gun and they heat the chemo up and spray it all inside you. And he said it'll be about, maybe 6 to 8 hours. Now, I actually said this when I went in, but that's another story. But I was also told that my analogy of the operation of the chemo and how the chemo was sprayed inside me is actually reasonably accurate. Not quite, but in layman's terms, it's actually what happens. In medical terms, a little bit different, but it is actually heated and sprayed inside. I then had an appointment to see him in 2 weeks. I stayed in hospital for 2 days. I had an appointment. Now, funny thing was, I had an appointment with the surgeon and I had an appointment at Monash Dandenong at the same time. Both exactly at the same time. So we rang the surgeon up and said, well, what should we do? And he said, no, go to Monash, that's fine. They're the ones who are looking after you. They're the ones who've referred you. Okay, so we went to the appointment, and I had the chief surgeon and another person, I forget what her role was, sit down with us, and they said, well, we're going to have to refer you to Peter Mac. Now, we hope you realise that you've got cancer. And I said, yes. I said, it was explained to me by the surgeon what was going to happen. Okay, so I was referred to Peter Mac. And that's where I'm going to leave this for part 1. And then we'll talk about part 2, where I'll talk about how I was feeling, how I got through this, and how I dealt with it, and what happened. And then in part 3 we'll do after bits. And there's quite a few after bits, so it's probably part 3 and part 4. I want to thank you for listening. I hope this has helped you in some way, although the next part probably is more helpful than this part. I do appreciate everyone who's watching. If you like it so far, please hit the like button and the subscribe button. It's free to subscribe. All it means is when the next part comes out, you will get notified. So please hit that like button and subscribe, and please, you can share this with people.